So what we found in the eastern U.S. is a lot of pathogen, which is actually used as a biocontrol. It's called trichoderma, and it's associated usually with native trees. And oftentimes it's just incorporated into soil as an amendment, and it creates better, healthier trees, and it prevents other pathogens of attacking that particular tree. But when we isolated, that's what we found in Tennessee, and when we did the same thing in California, where the trees are heavily infested, we found almost none of the trichoderma. So this could be one of the reasons that we're seeing differences in the east versus west, because we're finding a lot of basically native fungus associated with trees, which is one of the lines of defenses the trees have. But we're talking about native trees in this area. So now we're taking that basically natural product that's associated with the tree, which is also commercially available as a biocontrol. So we are using that to inoculate some of the trees in the greenhouse and look for the gene expression, basically to see what genes are turned on and off when we introduce that biocontrol and when we don't. So we're trying a number of different things to see if we can save the trees.
That's interesting about the some of the regulatory hurdles that you face and some of the logic behind it. I think it's kind of there's the lab leak hypothesis for COVID is a hot topic right now. So I think some listeners will maybe kind of hear some similarities there, which in my opinion, whether it is or isn't a lab leak thing, to me it feels a little bit like availability heuristic sort of thing, where it's kind of easy to imagine a movie of like, these scientists were meddling with Mother Nature, and then this crazy thing happened and mutated and got out of control. Where usually it's just yeah, usually like someone brought firewood to the wrong area, and that's what happens. It's a little more clumsy and nuanced and subtle than that. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the hurdles, which is. I think a lot of people get their ideas of science from TV, and TV jazzes things up quite a bit, and it's not super nuanced. And I love complexity and nuance. And I think it's endlessly fascinating to get lost in and keep diving into the fractal-like complexity of all things. But a lot of people kind of want to be hit over the head with things a little bit, and it's a little more exciting to imagine mad scientists in labs and that sort of and the more easily you can picture something, the more readily you believe that it could be the case. Availability heuristic and
so. Speaking of TV, yeah. Can I give you two things that always drive me crazy in CSI-based dramas?
CSI, oh man, they're so brutal. Yeah.
Now I'm just going to focus on two. Number one, since we're dispelling things, PCR does not take 5 minutes. So when they isolate DNA and then they need to confirm the match of their suspect, and they put it in a fancy machine, and then they get results in 5 minutes. They don't. Number one. Number two, these really expensive shows have really bad pipettes. They all have pipettes from the early 90s. I was like, please invest in just a nice set of pipettes. You can get it for $1,500.
Wait, what are they?
Pipettes, they're used basically for dispensing or obtaining very small amounts of liquid. So usually under 1 mil. And we use that for DNA isolation.
Okay.
And they're always old pipettes.
That's the thing that gets you. That's funny. I like that there's I'm a big Christopher Nolan fan, and you can tell that he does his research a bit more. And so when they're talking about things, it's things where like the concepts make sense within the world that he's building. And he's not just throwing around fancy sounding words. He's maybe building fancy concepts. But a thing like CSI it's so laughable because they just say words that they know the viewers aren't going to know the meaning of. So it's just like, ooh, a smart person is talking right now. And I think that going back to the idea of making science communication more is I also think that makes the idea of science more unnecessarily intimidating to the average public than it needs to be, because they see CSI. And first off, if you actually know science, that stuff's a joke. All the stuff that they wrote on the board, and none of those numbers add up. None of what they're saying actually makes sense. But for the person that doesn't know that, I imagine it's really intimidating to hear. Whereas a lot of the most profound concepts in, say, evolutionary theory are really, you don't need fancy words to explain them. You can explain them in a way that anyone that's willing can wrap their head around. And certainly I would never want to make fun of someone that doesn't have the capacity to learn this stuff. But in most cases, that's simply not the case. Most cases, it has a lot to do with a willingness. And sure, there needs to just be better communication.